The sun hung low in the sky, casting a golden hue over the dusty trail that stretched endlessly to the barren landscape. The air was thick with silence, save for the rhythmic clopping of hooves and the occasional groan of leather straps under strain. It was here, amidst this desolate expanse, where fate would take its course, a story of mystery, sacrifice, and revelation. Riding at the head of the small caravan was John Ironjaw Carter, a man whose reputation preceded him across the Wild West. His face bore the scars of countless battles, both physical and emotional, yet his eyes held an unyielding determination that spoke of someone who had faced death more times than most men could fathom. Behind him trudged a mule, burdened by what appeared to be nothing more than crates and supplies. But little did they know, the truth behind those crates would change everything. As the hours dragged on, the heat became unbearable, and even the seasoned travelers began to feel the weight of the journey pressing down upon them. Sweat dripped from their brows as they navigated the treacherous terrain, each step bringing them closer to their destination. Or so they thought. Then it happened. Without warning, the mule stumbled, its legs buckling beneath the heavy load it carried. For a moment, there was only stillness, broken only by the labored breathing of the animal. John dismounted swiftly, his boots kicking up clouds of dust as he approached the fallen creature. "What's wrong with you?" he muttered under his breath, his voice tinged with frustration but laced with concern. He knelt beside the mule, inspecting its legs for any sign of injury. There were none. Yet, despite his best efforts, the mule refused to rise, collapsing once again onto the dry earth. The rest of the group gathered around, their faces etched with worry. Among them was Clara Bennett, a young woman whose sharp intellect often masked her tender heart. She knelt beside John, her hands gentle as she examined the mule's condition. "It's not injured," she said softly, her brow furrowing in thought. "But something's wrong. Maybe it's just exhaustion." "Exhaustion?" John growled, his patience wearing thin. "We can't afford delays. We're already days behind schedule." His words carried the weight of urgency, for the mission they embarked upon was no ordinary one. Hidden within the crate strapped to the mule's back lay secrets that could alter the balance of power in these wild lands. Clara placed a calming hand on his arm. "Let us rest here for a while. If we push too hard now, we risk losing everything." Reluctantly, John nodded, though his expression remained grim. They set up camp near a cluster of rocks that offered some semblance of shade, hoping the brief respite would rejuvenate their weary companion. Night fell quickly, blanketing the desert in darkness, punctuated by the cold glow of stars above. Around the flickering firelight, the group shared stories and speculations about their mysterious cargo. Some believed it contained gold, others weapons, while a few whispered darker theories involving betrayal and vengeance. Yet none dared to open the crates, for they had been explicitly instructed not to do so until they reached their final destination. But then, as dawn broke and painted the horizon in hues of orange and pink, tragedy struck once more. The mule, despite all attempts to revive it, succumbed to whatever ailment plagued it. Its body lay lifeless in the middle of the trail, a somber reminder of nature's unforgiving hand. "What are we going to do now?" asked Daniel Hayes, the youngest member of the group, his voice trembling slightly. Tears welled in his eyes as he stared at the dead animal, guilt gnawing at him for having trusted it to carry such a vital load. "We'll have to redistribute the cargo among our horses," John replied firmly, though his tone betrayed a hint of unease. As they worked to transfer the crates, a strange sensation crept over them, a feeling that something wasn't quite right. One crate, in particular, seemed heavier than the others, its contents shifting subtly with every movement. Curiosity got the better of them. With trembling hands, Clara pried open the lid, revealing nothing, just empty space. Confusion rippled through the group as they inspected the other crates, only to find similar results. Each one appeared to be hollow, devoid of the treasures or tools they'd expected. "But how is this possible?" Daniel cried out, his voice filled with disbelief. "Why would we go through all this trouble if the crates are empty?" Little did they know, the answer lay buried deeper than they imagined. As they stood there, bewildered and defeated, a distant sound caught their attention. A faint humming, almost melodic, emanating from the very crate Clara had opened first. Intrigued, She pressed her ear against the wood, her breath catching as she realized the source of the noise. Inside the crate, hidden beneath layers of padding and cloth, was a person, a child no older than 10, sleeping peacefully amidst the confines of their makeshift prison. Gasps erupted from the group as they carefully lifted the boy into the light of day. His face was pale but serene, his chest rising and falling steadily with each breath. Clara cradled him in her arms, tears streaming down her cheeks as she gazed upon the innocent life they had unknowingly transported across miles of perilous terrain. "He's alive," she whispered, her voice choked with emotion. "Oh my God, he's alive." John approached cautiously, his rough exterior softening as he looked upon the child. "Who sent him? Why didn't they tell us?" His questions hung in the air, unanswered but demanding resolution. As the boy stirred awake, his wide eyes darting between the unfamiliar faces surrounding him, another realization dawned upon them. This wasn't just any child. It was the son of a powerful figure, a man whose influence spanned entire territories. The boy's presence explained the secrecy, the urgency, the lengths to which they had gone to ensure his safe passage. Yet, unbeknownst to them, danger lurked nearby. A rival faction, aware of the boy's importance, had been tracking their movements, intent on capturing him for their own gain. As the sun climbed higher in the sky, painting the desert in harsh daylight, the group prepared themselves, not just for the remainder of their journey, but for the battle that awaited them. And so, the story of the mule that collapsed in the middle of the trail unfolded into a tale far greater than anyone could have anticipated. For in the heart of the Wild West, where destinies were forged and legends born, the true value of courage and compassion would shine brighter than ever before. The boy's awakening brought a mix of relief and tension to the group. His name, as he timidly revealed after some coaxing from Clara, was Samuel. He spoke in soft, hesitant tones, his voice trembling with both fear and curiosity. "Where am I?" he asked, clutching Clara's shirt like a lifeline. "You're safe now," Clara reassured him, her maternal instincts taking over. She brushed a strand of dusty hair from his forehead, trying to ease the confusion etched into his young face. But Samuel's eyes darted around nervously, searching for something or someone that wasn't there. "Mother," he whispered, the word barely audible. It was clear that whoever had entrusted him to this perilous journey was not far from his thoughts. John exchanged a glance with Daniel, who nodded subtly, understanding the unspoken weight of the situation. They couldn't afford to linger any longer. Their pursuers might already be closing in. Without delay, they dismantled their makeshift camp, packing what little they had left onto their horses. Samuel was placed gently on one of the mounts, his small frame swamped by the saddle but held securely by Daniel's steady hands. As they prepared to ride out, John scanned the horizon once more, his hand resting on the holster at his hip. The desert stretched endlessly before them, its golden sands shimmering under the relentless sun, but hidden within its vastness lay danger lurking just beyond sight. Their path led them toward an old trail that wound through a series of rocky outcrops and sparse vegetation. Here, the landscape shifted subtly, the oppressive heat giving way to patches of shade provided by twisted juniper trees and jagged boulders. It was here, amidst a relative cover, that they hoped to evade detection. Yet the oppressive stillness of the wilderness only heightened their senses, every snap of a twig or rustle of leaves sending shivers down their spines. Samuel remained quiet during the ride, his wide eyes taking in the alien world around him. At one point, he pointed toward a distant ridge where vultures circled lazily in the sky. "What are those birds looking for?" he asked innocently. Clara hesitated, unsure how much to reveal. "Sometimes birds look for things we don't understand yet," she said carefully, choosing her words wisely. Her response seemed to satisfy Samuel for the moment, though the shadow of worry lingered in his gaze. By midday, the group reached a shallow riverbed, its waters reduced to little more than trickles due to the dry season. They paused briefly, allowing their horses and themselves to drink deeply. The cool water felt like a blessing against their parched throats, but even this brief respite was tinged with unease. John kept watch, his sharp eyes scanning the surrounding hills for any sign of movement. It wasn't long before they spotted it, a faint cloud of dust rising in the distance. moving steadily in their direction. "We got company," John muttered grimly, his jaw tightening. The others froze, exchanging anxious glances. If their pursuers caught up, the consequences could be dire, not just for them, but for Samuel as well. "We need to move faster," Daniel suggested, his voice tinged with urgency. "But if we push too hard, the horses won't last." "There's another way," Clara interjected suddenly, pointing toward a narrow pass between two towering cliffs. "I remember reading about it in my father's journals. It's steep and dangerous, but it might buy us enough time to lose them." John studied the terrain carefully, weighing the risks. "All right," he decided finally, "but we'll have to go slow and steady. One misstep and we're done." Thus began their ascent through the treacherous pass, a winding path carved precariously into the side of the mountain. Rocks crumbled beneath their hooves, and the air grew thin as they climbed higher. Samuel clung tightly to Daniel, his knuckles white with fear, while Clara rode close behind, offering words of encouragement whenever the boy looked ready to break down. As they neared the summit, the sound of distant gunfire echoed to the canyon below. Bullets ricocheted off the rocks, sending shards flying dangerously close to the group. "They're shooting blind," John shouted over the noise. "Stay low and keep moving." Despite the chaos, Samuel surprised everyone with his composure. Though visibly shaken, he didn't cry or panic, instead focusing intently on staying balanced atop the horse. This unexpected bravery earned him a rare smile from John, who had initially viewed the boy as nothing more than a burden. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, they crested the ridge and found themselves on the other side, the pursuit momentarily thwarted by the unforgiving terrain. Below them stretched a lush valley dotted with patches of greenery and flowing streams, a stark contrast to the arid wasteland they had traversed earlier. In the distance, nestled among the trees, stood a modest ranch house, its chimney puffing smoke into the crisp afternoon air. "That must be our destination," Clara murmured, squinting against the sunlight. Hope flickered in her chest, though tempered by caution. They weren't out of the woods yet, far from it, but the sight of shelter offered a glimmer of promise. As they descended into the valley, the atmosphere changed dramatically. Birds chirped melodically, and the scent of pine filled the air. Samuel leaned forward slightly, marveling at the beauty surrounding him. For the first time since his rescue, a genuine smile crossed his face. But their journey was far from over. Unknown to them, the rival faction had regrouped, determined to reclaim their prize. And when they did catch up, the ensuing confrontation would test the limits of courage, loyalty, and sacrifice. For now, however, the group pressed onward, driven by the knowledge that every step closer to safety brought them further away from certain doom. Little did they know, the greatest challenge awaited them just beyond the next bend in the trail. The ranch house loomed closer as the group descended into the valley, its weathered wooden walls and rusted tin roof standing as a testament to years of resilience against the elements. Smoke curled lazily from the chimney, carrying with it a comforting aroma of cooking meat and burning wood. It was a stark contrast to the harsh realities they had endured on the trail, and for a brief moment, the tension in their shoulders eased. Samuel leaned forward in his saddle, his eyes wide with wonder. "Is this where we're going?" he asked, his voice tinged with excitement despite the exhaustion evident in his posture. Clara nodded reassuringly. "This is the place," she said, her tone soft but firm. "We'll be safe here for now." As they approached, the sound of barking dogs echoed through the air, followed by the sharp crack of a rifle shot fired into the sky. A man emerged from the shadows of the porch, his rifle held loosely at his side, but ready for action. His face was lined with age and experience, his eyes sharp and calculating as they scanned the newcomers. "Whoa there," he called out, his voice gravelly but commanding. "State your business before I decide whether you're friend or foe." John reined in his horse, raising a hand in a gesture of peace. "We're travelers seeking refuge," he replied evenly, though his fingers hovered close to the handle of his revolver. "And we've got something, or rather, someone you might want to see." The man squinted, his gaze narrowing as he took in the sight of Samuel perched awkwardly on Daniel's horse. For a moment his expression remained unreadable, but then a flicker of recognition passed across his features, replaced almost instantly by suspicion. "You brought him here?" the man asked, his voice dropping an octave. "Why?" Before John could respond, Clara dismounted and stepped forward, her movements deliberate and measured. "His safety is paramount," she explained, her voice steady despite the weight of the situation. "We were hired to deliver him, to ensure he reached this place unharmed. But there are others who seek to take him, for reasons that aren't entirely clear." The man's brow furrowed, his mind clearly racing with possibilities. He holstered his rifle, but made no move to invite them inside. Instead, he gestured toward the barn behind him. "Tend to your horses first," he instructed gruffly. "Then we'll talk." The group obliged, grateful for the opportunity to rest their weary mounts. As they worked, Samuel slid off the horse and wandered curiously toward the ranch house, his small steps tentative but curious. The man watched him closely, his expression softening ever so slightly. Once the horses were settled, the group gathered on the porch, their faces drawn tight with fatigue and unease. The man introduced himself as Thomas Granger, a former soldier turned rancher whose life had been anything but peaceful since retiring from the Army. His story mirrored many in the Wild West, a blend of hardship, loss, and survival. "I know why you've come," Thomas said finally, breaking the silence that had settled over the group. "Or at least, I think I do." He glanced pointedly at Samuel, who stood near the edge of the porch, playing absently with a stick he'd found on the ground. "That boy, he's important. Important enough that people will kill to get their hands on him." Clara exchanged a glance with John, her heart sinking at the confirmation of their fears. "How much do you know?" she asked cautiously. Thomas sighed, running a hand through his graying hair. "Enough to understand the stakes. His father was a powerful man, a general. If rumors are to be believed, when the war ended, he disappeared, leaving behind only whispers of betrayal and intrigue. Some say he fled because he feared for his life. Others claim he abandoned his post to protect his family." "And Samuel?" John pressed, his voice low but urgent. "The boy's the key," Thomas replied cryptically. "What exactly he represents, I can't say for certain. But those who pursue and believe he holds answers, secrets that could shift the balance of power in ways neither side anticipated." A heavy silence fell over the group as they absorbed the implications of his words. If what Thomas said was true, then Samuel wasn't just a child caught in the crossfire of a larger conflict. He was the embodiment of it. But why bring him here? Clara asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Why not send him somewhere safer? Thomas shook his head grimly. There is no safe anymore. Not when both sides are willing to burn the world down to claim what they believe belongs to them. This place was chosen because it's isolated, hard to find unless you know exactly where to look. And even then, getting here alive isn't guaranteed. Just as the conversation seemed to deepen further, a distant rumble shattered the calm. The group froze, their heads snapping toward the horizon as dark clouds of dust began to rise in the distance. "They've found us," Thomas muttered, his hand instinctively moving to the holster at his hip. "And they won't stop until they have what they came for." Without hesitation, Thomas issued orders, his military background shining through in precision of his commands. "Get inside. Barricade the doors and windows. If they breach the perimeter, we'll hold them off as long as we can." The group sprang into action, their movements fueled by adrenaline and desperation. Samuel clung tightly to Clara, his earlier curiosity replaced by fear as the reality of their situation sank in. John and Daniel joined Thomas in preparing defenses, stacking crates and barrels along the front of the house to create makeshift barriers. As the first shots rang out, echoing through the valley like thunderclaps, the battle commenced. Bullets whizzed past, embedding themselves in wood and stone, while shouts and curses filled the air. Despite their best efforts, the attackers continued to advance, relentless in their pursuit. Inside the house, Clara huddled with Samuel, her arms wrapped protectively around him as the sounds of chaos raged outside. "Stay quiet," she whispered, her voice trembling but resolute. "Everything will be all right." But deep down, she knew the truth, that nothing about this day would ever feel truly right again. For in the heart of the Wild West, where loyalty was tested and lives hung in the balance, the line between hero and villain often blurred beyond recognition. and as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of fire and blood, the group braced themselves for whatever horrors awaited them in the night ahead. The night descended upon the valley like a heavy shroud, its darkness concealing both friend and foe. Inside the ranch house, the air was thick with tension as Clara clutched Samuel tightly to her chest, her heart pounding in sync with the rhythmic thuds of bullets striking the wooden walls. The boy trembled against her, his small hands gripping the fabric of her shirt as if it were the only anchor holding him steady amidst the storm. Outside, the battle raged on, each side exchanging volleys of gunfire under the cold light of the moon. John and Daniel fought alongside Thomas, their movements precise and calculated despite the chaos surrounding them. Bullets ricocheted off the makeshift barriers, sending splinters flying into the night. The attackers, relentless and determined, pressed forward with an intensity that spoke of desperation, or perhaps madness. Thomas barked orders between shots, his voice cutting through the din like a blade. "Reload. Keep your heads down." He crouched behind a stack of crates, reloading his rifle with practiced efficiency before leaning out to fire another round. His aim was unerring, each shot finding its mark with deadly precision. But even his skill couldn't stem the tide of enemies closing in from all sides. "They're circling us," Daniel shouted, his voice strained as he fired over his shoulder, a shadowy figure darting along the edge of the property. "We can't hold them off forever." John gritted his teeth, his mind racing for a solution. They had come so far, endured so much, only to be trapped here in this isolated ranch. Yet surrender wasn't an option, not when Samuel's life hung in the balance. "We need to make a stand," he growled, his eyes scanning the perimeter for any weakness in their defenses. Inside, Clara tried to keep Samuel calm, whispering soothing words into his ear while keeping one eye on the door. She could hear the muffled sound of the fight outside, each explosion and cry echoing through the walls. Fear gnawed at her insides, but she forced herself to remain composed, for Samuel's sake, if nothing else. "Clara," Samuel's voice broke through her thoughts, soft but urgent. "What happens if they win?" Her breath caught her throat, and for a moment she struggled to find the right words. "They won't," she said finally, her voice firmer than she felt. "Not while we're still breathing." But deep down, she knew the truth, that the odds were stacked heavily against them. The attackers seemed endless, their numbers growing with every passing minute. And though the group inside the ranch house fought valiantly, they were outnumbered and outgunned. As the hours dragged on, exhaustion began to take its toll. Arms grew heavy, fingers fumbled with ammunition, and tempers flared under pressure. Yet amidst the turmoil, a strange resolve settled over the defenders, a shared understanding that they would protect Samuel at all costs, no matter the personal sacrifice required. Then, just as hope seemed to flicker and fade, a new sound pierced the night, a distant whistle carried by the wind. It was faint but unmistakable, followed moments later by the thunder of hooves galloping toward the ranch. Reinforcements had arrived. At first, the group inside dared not believe it. Had someone sent word ahead? Or was this merely another trap laid by their enemies? But as the silhouette of a lone rider emerged from the shadows, riding hard and fast, doubt gave way to cautious optimism. "Who goes there?" Thomas called out, his rifle trained on the approaching figure. The rider pulled up short, raising a hand in greeting. "Friends of yours, I hope," came the reply, a voice tinged with humor despite the gravity of the situation. The man dismounted, revealing himself to be a wiry individual with sharp features and a satchel slung across his shoulder. He introduced himself as Ezekiel Kane, a scout hired by none other than Samuel's father himself. "I've been tracking these bastards for days," Ezekiel explained, his gaze sweeping over the scene before him. "Seems they got lucky this time. But don't worry, I brought friends." True to his word, more riders soon appeared on the horizon, their silhouettes stark against the starlit sky. Within minutes, the tide of the battle shifted dramatically. The attackers, caught between two fronts, found themselves overwhelmed and scattered. Some fled into the night, while others fell beneath the guns of Ezekiel's reinforcements. As the last echoes of gunfire faded into silence, the group emerged cautiously from the ranch house, blinking against the sudden clarity of the post-battle calm. Samuel clung to Clara's hand, his wide eyes taking in the aftermath, the broken bodies, the shattered barriers, and the lingering scent of gunpowder hanging heavy in the air. Ezekiel approached them, tipping his hat in respect. "You folks did good out here," he said, his tone genuine, "better than most would have managed. But now, it's time to get moving again. This place ain't safe anymore, not after tonight." John nodded grimly, already formulating a plan in his mind. Where to next? Ezekiel hesitated, glancing briefly at Samuel before answering. "There's a hidden compound further north, well guarded, well supplied. It's where General Bennett planned to send his son if things ever got too hot. That's our destination now." General Bennett. The name sent a ripple through the group, confirming what they had suspected but never fully acknowledged. Samuel's father wasn't just some obscure figure from the past. He was a legend, a man whose actions had shaped the course of history in ways few understood. But little did they know, the journey ahead would reveal truths far greater than they imagined. For buried within the secrets of the Wild West lay mysteries that connected past and present in ways no one could have foreseen. And as the dawn broke over the valley, painting the world in hues of gold and crimson, the group prepared once more to face whatever dangers awaited them on the road ahead.